Okay, Geraint, as well as the owner van drivers scheme, you're also expanding the remit of FORS into bus and coach. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, FORS for many years has been vehicle agnostic, and what I mean by that, it is suitable for any vehicle. It could be suitable for grey fleet. But we're very mindful that buses and coaches they need to have an overarching scheme such as FORS that can be tailored to that sector. Very mindful of the differences between a bus and a coach, and that they are two distinct different sectors. We're currently working on a school transport white paper because we're very mindful of the incidents that have happened recently, some serious incidents where people have lost their lives. And I think FORS can make a real tangible difference in those sectors. And I've got an interest in it personally because I've got a PSV myself. And I think I'm the first FORS concession director to be a qualified transport manager in bus and coach. So I haven't driven a coach for quite a few years, but it is a sector that we can focus on and get our teeth in, because the challenges are similar to the freight sector, of course, and it's about making a difference and saving lives ultimately.
I mean, I find it interesting. I do talk to the odd bus and coach operator because they seem to be further down the decarbonisation journey in many ways in the freight sector because of the funding model. And I went to see Reading Bus, for example, recently, and they were going with gas and now electric. Do you think there's lessons that the HGV sector could learn from the PSV sector? Yeah,
it's very much horses for courses. When you're looking at different vehicle architectures, for example, I don't think I would nail my colours to the mast and go down a particular route. I don't think there's a particular panacea. Previously, I run a tramping operation, vehicles all over the UK, and obviously diesel and HVO being the lowest of low-hanging fruit there. But aside from HVO, obviously, of course, you need to know where your HVO is coming from. It's from a reputable, sustainable source that can be audited and challenged. But then, is biomethane the right answer? Is a BEV the right answer? And I think when you look at service buses, like you mentioned Reading Bus, a BEV could very well work effectively in that kind of scenario, or indeed a hydrogen vehicle. But then say you've got a load of kids going on a school trip to Austria, then you're probably back to a HVO or traditionally fossil-fueled vehicle. So I think it's horses for courses, but as vehicle architectures improve, and then we look at the payloads and the vehicle designs and things like that, because a typical integral coach, 26 ton, by the time you put a couple of batteries on it, you're losing the payload for the passengers and the luggage space as well. So there's a lot to think about with vehicle architectures.
I mean, one of the key benefits of FORS accreditation has been the training that you offer, and we saw today in the conference how driver training is constantly evolving. Are the training needs of PSV and HGV drivers, do you think, very different? Will there be specific modules for the coach, long-distance coach operators and the bus operators?
Yeah, no, we are looking as well at using third-party e-learning as well, because we're mindful that a lot of operators will be using their own e-learning and may have things in place already. There is, of course, a lot of crossover. As I said in my opening speech this morning, I was actually driving a coach in Cardiff when I had an interaction with a vulnerable road user. Had I not had adequate observations in my mirror, that could have had a very different outcome. And indeed, driving the truck, that was another challenge. But both having issues with vulnerable road users and reducing work-related road risk. So there's a lot of crossover, and particularly on the legal and compliance stuff, your daily checks and things like that. Obviously doing the daily checks on a 49-seater coach is going to be different to a 44-ton Arctic, but the principle is the same, making sure that your fluids and you're doing your tyres, your wheel nuts and all the rest of it. So there is quite a lot of crossover.
Yes. I mean, you're a former RHA board director, and the RHA recently expanded its remit to cover bus and coach. It's interesting the way it's going and how you're trying to bring the sectors together rather than separate them. Do you think that's a viable means of bringing more operators on board into FORS?
I think it is, and I think that the RHA, the work that's been done there has been fantastic in reaching out to the coach sector in particular, and again making that distinction between buses and coaches and doing something tangible for the coach sector. They've done a tremendous job, and from a compliance point of view, and taking it that little bit further by having the FORS framework, I always see FORS myself as a thank God I've got rather than I wish I had. I am very mindful as an operator, you are one step away from a public inquiry. It only takes one driver to drop the ball and not do their daily checks properly, and that results, say, in having an S-Mark PG9. Then you have a visit from the DVSA, they do an MIVR, and then that's when you fall back on your FORS structures and framework that you've got in place. And like I said, it's a thank God I've got rather than I wish I had. Or God forbid the worst happens and you have a fatality, and they do a deep dive into your systems and your procedures and your policies. And I know, because I've been there and I've done that, and when you can stand by the courage of your convictions that you've done everything and you've taken a good hard look at yourself, what you could have done to prevent that incident, and in the incident I'm talking about, nothing. But when you're interviewed under pace, it does focus the mind, and then it comes back to thank God I had, rather than I wish I had, because I had it in spadefuls. And when it gets challenged, and if it did go to court, that didn't as it happened, but if it did go to court, that evidence would be scrutinised. And because I had the policies and procedures that was underpinned by FORS, I could go confidently into that meeting.
Fantastic. A perfect explanation. Geraint, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Steve.